Welcome to Point Blank. This is your host, Panama Crypto. Today our guest is DJ Thistle. Welcome, Thistle. Good to have you in Point Blank, my man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's kick it off. So what have you been up to lately in and out of crypto, Thistle?
Yeah, well, just trying to keep some levels of normalcy, I guess. Some things are very normal, some things are very not. My wife's work hasn't been affected at all. They've been more profitable this year, so, that's good. Whereas, I have 3 young kids and there's lots of restrictions in the community. They can't go to play places and all that kind of stuff and visit family properly. So that's kind of annoying. And myself, the lack of being able to go out and play music and do all that kind of stuff is definitely taking its toll. I think ahead of time, people would have thought a lot of the introverts might have a hard time during a pandemic because they can't get out at all. But really, it's been kind of the other way around. I think it's all the extroverts that have to stay at home, can't go to large crowds, can't do stuff like that. It just, we all kind of get our energy from different things in life. And some of us like to get out there and interact with people. So that's been the hardest adjustment for me.
Specifically where you at, if you don't mind me asking, what impact has COVID had?
Here in my city, it's been relatively minimal until the last couple of weeks. Let's see, when the news was saying that things were happening in China in, December and January, and then beginning of January, mid-January maybe, there was a case from Seattle that came up to Vancouver. And things didn't really kick off in Vancouver and British Columbia right then, but I think because a case came up early, a lot of people took it more seriously. So when the first spring outbreaks happened, it got a lot worse at Eastern Canada than Western Canada. But I think everyone has just kind of got burnout now. You spend 2/3 of a year trying to stay safe and then you just want to go and do things, right? So this second wave that we're having now is definitely quite bigger than the first. So we're just starting to see, a lot of the mandatory restrictions and masks. Most of it has just kind of been the businesses doing it, and the province hasn't been mandating too much yet, but that's all been changing this week.
The lockdown has been enforced strictly?
So in Vancouver and Greater Vancouver, they're saying people shouldn't leave the area and whatnot. And I'm outside of that area, but now our area is getting more cases and at a pretty quick rate. So they're sort of suggesting here that we shouldn't leave our region as well too. So I'm kind of up in the mountains. We're more isolated from things, so that's, I think, one reason why it's been a lot easier here to be able to still go out and do things, the spring lockdown was really tough, listening to people back east in Ontario and Quebec that were on total lockdown, and in Europe, places people weren't allowed to even leave their homes, and we were still allowed to get out and go hiking and all that kind of stuff. So I think out of all this, probably people that can afford to leave the city and can do remote work will probably end up moving to slightly more rural locations, because I guess it kind of depends on where you live, but in Canada, things are so spread out that it a 4-hour drive to Vancouver. Calgary is 6 hours from here. People are just, the cities are spread out. So you're used to going a pretty big distance to go do things. I know in America, things are a lot closer, but here it's kind of you can live in the mountains and drive down to the city a couple hours away and then go to a concert, go to, the fair and all that kind of stuff. And just make a weekend out of it, get a nice hotel room and go do a bunch of stuff in the city and then go back. So you can still enjoy all the city stuff, right? Not everyone needs to live right downtown. So I hope we'll probably see something like that. That'll obviously make commercial real estate and other real estate like that cheaper in the cities. And we'll probably actually see, housing prices not crash in the more rural areas, because people are going to want some more freedom, maybe buying small hobby farms, things like that.
It doesn't sound too bad here in Panama. There was lockdown for something like 7 months, Like for example, males could only go out Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, depending on their last digit of their ID. For example, me, my last digit is 6, so I could only go out from 5 to something like 7 or something, like twice a week. I
Yeah,
mean, three times a week. So quite restrictive. And if you were caught by the police or the sanitary roadblocks or whatever, you get a fine and would go to jail for like overnight.
that is
Oh,
that's way intense, right? Yeah, that's.
yeah.
I mean, I've seen some things from Australia, and I've heard some things from Central and South America, like yourself there, Central America. Whereas, in Canada, they haven't really. I mean, I think there was somebody that got arrested in Quebec. The province of Quebec is like, it's kind of like a different vibe than the rest of Canada. It's like basically all French Canadians, and it's more of a distinct society. So they kind of have their own set of rules, and but the rest of Canada, we haven't seen that yet. But we're getting the huge case spike now, so I hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, we recently opened up from the last stages of restriction. So everything is open up right now. All the businesses are open except like clubs and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
it's looking better. Hopefully, cases are not gonna spike and things are gonna be locked again. So looking forward for like good holiday season down here.
Yeah.
So Thistle, what your beginning in crypto looked like?
Yeah, my beginning in crypto kind of started completely away from crypto. So it's kind of a funny story. Like, this is like my grandfather used to travel a lot, and he used to just keep the coins of all the countries that he went to, and he gave me a big sack of coins when I was a little kid, and they just kind of got like put away, and I found them right around when I was graduating high school, I think. And it just kind of got me interested in old numismatic coins and coins in general. And then, once I started learning more about coins, kind of exiting high school, starting university, started just learning more about numismatic coins, which is basically coins that have collector's value. And I realized I had this silver dollar. It was like the second year that the dollar in Canada was made into this round silver coin with a canoe on it, and it had some value. So that just kind of made me learn more about silver, because it was the price of the silver itself was helping the price of these old coins. So from that, I started learning about precious metals and whatnot, and then I think we're in like the 2008, 2009 at this point. And I started just kind of like buying junk silver and stuff like that, and ended up sort of in the precious metals bubble, which got me into charting. And because I was into charting and whatnot, now we'll fast forward to, I think it was like November or December of 2013. No, actually, sorry, it was way before that. It was still 2013, and the Bitcoin bubble was kind of doing its double bubble. It was at horrifically low prices, like $55, and my friends were telling me about it because I was into charting, and here's this new technology, and I was really interested. I didn't have much money then. It was still like paying off my student debt from engineering school, like audio engineering. But it was interesting, and I wanted to buy some, but I just like couldn't figure out how to, or where to, or like what was even up. So, the price went from like 55 to I think like 150 or $200, like super fast. And I was like, oh, okay, that's crazy. It went up super fast. I guess I missed the boat, right? and then just kind of forgot about it because it was tough to get at the time, and the price just went straight up and straight down, and whatever. So then go back to the backside of 2013, and now price is just blowing through hundreds and hundreds of dollars higher on its trek to over 1,000. And I was playing a party at like an arcade, so like an actual sit down cabinet arcade, and they would move the stuff, and they have all these cool lasers and stuff like that. So a friend of mine that was there pulls me into the back, kind of into the green room where there's a computer, because these were the guys that told me about it in the beginning of the year. And he's like, yeah, check this stuff out. You know, I know you're into charts. And he showed me Cryptsy and Dogecoin. And that's where I learned about Wulong. And and then that's kind of all she wrote since then. It was my abstract journey of how I found it. And then that winter, so 2013, 2014, was when I then kind of got more active in things, which was near the top of that bubble. So even though I heard about it at the bottom of that bubble, it was next to impossible to figure out how to buy. And there wasn't a lot of hype around anything. And it was only if you knew a couple people, and I just kind of forgot about it. And then after that bubble was definitely when it became more mainstream. And, people have just slowly scaled in since then.
Do you have any crypto project going on?
Really interested in the I always say it backwards, NFT, non-fungible token. Yeah, the NFT space interests me. At first, I was kind of like many other people. I can just right-click save this. It's garbage. Why is anybody interested in this? But I had some ideas around music and blockchain copyright for a few years now, and haven't really seen many people do much with it. And this sort of opens that door again, I think, from the audio side, because the NFT space was really just, like pictures, and then, a month later, some GIFs, and now, a couple months into it, audio is getting in. So I think that some of the copyright things interest me. So I've working with some other musicians that are just, other musicians that are kind of more active on Twitter. And then I've also hooked up with a couple guys that are from the crypto space itself. I don't want to really say anything yet. We'll just let the projects mature. But I think that there's potential in the NFT space. Ironically enough, because of COVID, I think that the COVID, everything has just sort of sped up the timeline on everything from UBI to virtual reality. My sort of, social structure thesis for the next 10 or 20 years was this kind of hypothesis that automation was going to keep on taking more jobs, and that UBI would be inevitable. In my scenario, there was no pandemic. So I was thinking that as corporations increase automation, that the governments would be able to tax the corporation per robot worker, so that part of the UBI, because they're making more money and they're saving money, so they should be chipping back into the system more. So I thought that UBI would kind of be partially paid for that way. And then with that, there'd be people with more time, and you're either going to have this, with more time on our hands, humans are going to either find a way to become, more spiritual and find themselves, or they're going to just immerse themselves in a digital realities. I think it's just going to be an extreme like that. We tend to, go with the pendulum swings and not rest with something normal in the middle. And unfortunately, society doesn't really show us many examples where we're just going to turn to a spiritual existence. So I think that virtual reality type stuff was going to be big. But I'm thinking 10, 15 years from now. But now that everyone's been forced to stay home and learn about online shopping and curbside pickup, to just being home more and playing more games, and virtual reality and augmented reality things are increasing. So I think the NFT stuff, whether it's people getting into stuff that doesn't exist yet, or Mana, the Decentraland, that kind of interests me just recently, and just learning about it this month more. Like, I've known about it, but like actually figuring out how I can use it. So yeah, that's what I think has potential that maybe people are overlooking.
Yeah, just this pandemic is just gonna kick forward everything up, especially in that realm: digitalization, augmented reality, NFTs, hopefully. But I guess, in my view, at the beginning of this, the bull run and the NFT hype, I was exactly thinking like you, like this right click, copy paste, and save for later. sort of NFTs is not gonna work. I'm thinking more into the in-game collectibles
Yeah.
that could be used within games or other platforms that could be used.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of how I see it too, is, it's maybe not all NFTs have use, but if you can find ways to take
Exactly.
the NFTs and insert them into that digital realm. And then for music, like I said, I think that there's going to be blockchain copyright future. Yeah.
Switching here to charting and trading, what is your general approach to maximize gains in crypto? What is your edge?
My edge, I don't know. Crypto is interesting in that when I was first learning about it and, charting it and being interested, but had no skin in the game, versus how things have evolved over time. My honest opinion is that your edge has to evolve. And because the industry, the ecosystem has changed so much, when things were completely illiquid to more and more liquidity, to then leverage, to then CME, to then all these extra, futures types products. Along with that, along to the side of that, like parallel to that, we've also seen more altcoin development, that sometimes has actual usage now and not just garbage. So we kind of got like this one road where Bitcoin is becoming like more regulated and more mainstream and more accessible by professionals and professional trading algorithms. And I think that every from every 6 months to year or so, people should be almost retooling their trading style a little bit, like just not changing it, because what works in terms of price levels and things like that, but how the market is going to react to those levels is totally different. If you were to tell people, if people in 2014 or 2015 would see the amount of throwbacks on breakouts now, they just go, why are you guys even trading it? Because back then, because it was a less liquid market, once levels broke, people's buys are then triggering to buy, there's less on the books, and just everything runs, right? So like the breakout is a breakout, and it's not going to go back down because so much room has been gained, and then everyone is just kind of like pushing forward. Now we get these momentum ignition moves where it's clear that algorithms are just kind of squashing price, and then they give a little pop, everybody goes and their orders trigger retail, and then you just have wick after wick after wick that's coming down at certain levels because there's more liquidity, there's more intelligent algorithms. So in that sense, people's edge, I believe you should always be reevaluating your edge against how the market itself is evolving. And that goes with altcoins too, because altcoins were just being bought on crappy exchanges, and then bigger exchanges, and then the best exchanges, and now there's futures products on exchanges doing billions of dollars. So even how those have changed, it's their price action has changed. So on the big scale, my view is sort of like less is more. I'm a big believer in cycles. I think that those things are happening. So I kind of like to look at Wyckoff or Livermore market models and market cycle theories. And then I look at what the price action looks like and what the last bit of the left side of my chart looks like, chart history. And then I look at that and go, okay, well, I have market experience. I think price might move like X. Now I'm going to look at my Wyckoff and Livermore theory. Where does this fall into there? Okay, so that looks like this pattern or that pattern. So it could turn out like Y. Now I take my kind of GAN theory, which is time and cycles, and look at when are these Livermore and Wyckoff price patterns, if I were to compress or expand the ratio of that pattern, where is it going to line up with a GAN time cycle? Because, when you look at a lot of, especially altcoins, if you look at a lot of altcoin charts, I think Doge is probably the best one. 30 days up, 190 days down. It's done that cycle quite a number of times. So, if you're only getting that many days up and that many days down, why are you wasting your time? Like, time is important. Sure, you can short things, but you're only shorting things and, kind of hedging your bet unless you're adding massive leverage on your shorts. Whereas on the upside, you can just be buying spot and you're double, tripling, quadrupling, 10xing your money, right? So everyone's always trying to buy these dips for the next 10x. But if the cycles are just so bloody obvious that you're wasting your time doing this all the time, that's what I think my edge is trying to kind of overlay these cycles so that I don't waste my time.
This episode is brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange that makes possible to trade with leverage on legacy markets from a single Bitcoin-based account. I was reading Not So Fast had said that you were the first person to mention altseason. How did that start?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one that got brought up last year or the year before. Some like random person was like, how did this even happen? And then somebody else went and did the humongous, it must have been a huge Twitter search to have to figure out, when it started. And somebody posted a tweet that I had sent to Dre, and I used the term altseason in it. And I guess that's when it was first publicly said. And for me, it was because I was recognizing the cycles that we just talked about, right? Because I think that time is important, and I think that the algorithms show that. And back then it was a little more. There was less examples to kind of prove it. Even though with the short amount of time that was there, I perceived that those cycles were there. And since whenever that was, 2014 or 2015, probably 2015. We see that more and more and more, especially with Doge, as the example, that these cycles do exist. So altseason, people can go check out. I'll actually just go there along with. So if you want to type in, anybody can, as they're listening, the real altseason.com. And the pinned article is called "What is Altseason?" And from there you can get the huge rundown and learn more. Maybe you're a new crypto person, maybe you're an old person that just wants an older crypto person that just wants the history, or maybe you've never, just you're totally new to crypto, and this can maybe help you see some of those cycles. So, in the beginning, what was this? The prices were down in the hundreds, and when and what is alt season? So the original meaning, and I'm just reading this off the website so people can know, where it came from. The term alt season is a combination of the words altcoin and season. The word season is used because I identified certain times of the year that Bitcoin dominance was regularly challenged, and it was correlated with seasonal factors and repeating cycles. So we generally are looking at December 7th and December 26th, plus or minus a day or two, where we look for pivot points. So often, if people can imagine this in their head, Bitcoin kind of like in a good bull market scenario, Bitcoin is sort of compressing in September, going into the autumn equinox, and then will expand in, hopefully, if it's in a bullish way, it'll break out into Black Friday, early December, and then kind of compress and consolidate again. So often what happens is those altcoins are compressing in September, and as Bitcoin takes off into Black Friday, November, altcoins have been dipping from September into Black Friday. And then they often find like a spike low around December 7th, and then either rebound hard off that or come back down for a double bottom around Christmas time, and then a little bit of compression, and then the market tends for altcoins and Bitcoin dominance falling and altcoins rising into March, April. So kind of December 7th and or winter solstice is bullish into late March, early April, or the spring equinox. So that's kind of where alt season came from and why it's a season, and that it actually has dates. People often just say, oh, the market's going up, alt season is here. That's not correct. If people go down to the bottom, they'll see an article called Bitcoin Dominance and Altcoin Season, and Alt Season, sorry. And you'll see there with the December blue lines being marked, and often it's just straight down after that, so that the correlation is there. Why is the correlation there? I have no idea. What led me to that was researching and learning more about GAN. So GAN thought that these market pivots happened in the stocks with spring equinox, so like March 20th, whereas crypto has kind of like always been flipped back in the day anyway. There's more correlation now, but it was kind of like flipped from legacy markets. And as I was doing my GAN research, I was not finding any correlation with crypto. And then I thought, geez, well, maybe I'll just flip it, do it all backwards. And then I looked at September instead of March, and I was like, Eureka, we have it. So that was that's what it is. September alt season has a date, and the cycles are there, and it's shown with Bitcoin dominance. So I think, what are we at here? November 13th? Yeah, people should cyclically be starting to really start looking at their altcoin charts from now for the next month. And then that next month after that, if the TA setups are there, you're probably buying.
So undoubtedly, you say we're in an alt season or coming into an alt season?
Yeah. So in terms of like the cyclical hard date alt season, we are like 3.5 weeks away. And that's sort of like the beginning of the window. So a generalized prediction would be that the altcoin market cap is going to find a way to either spike bottom or make a rounded bottom into December 7th. And then on December 7th, between December 7th and December 26th, you'll either see like an Adam and Eve or a double bottom pattern, or it'll bounce straight off December 7th. And then let's say around, I don't know, the 13th, it might kind of go like sideways and compress. So kind of like a small V bottom before, and then an extension arm before then taking off December 26th. So I'm not saying that definitely was what will happen, but those are the two most seen patterns that keep popping up on those dates. They don't seem to pop up on, I don't know, July 17th or something, right? But if people look at the Bitcoin dominance chart and check out the articles, you'll see that it's there.
So cool. So I guess we're gonna have very good holidays coming up.
Hopefully, yeah, right. And so again, it kind of makes me wonder, like, so back in the day, a lot of the people that got, and the people that I knew that got rich off of Bitcoin, it was really kind of like fluke in that, you got poor people that are into gaming, and it's winter in Canada, because there is a lot of original Bitcoin whales that are from Canada, and they were using mining for heat straight up, and it wasn't necessarily that they were just thought Bitcoin was the future. Like, yeah, it was cool, and they're into that stuff, and it's tech, and they're into tech, and it could make them some money because the price wasn't going down all the time. But yeah, like the heat function actually played into why people were doing some mining. So I think, if you were to say that if there is cycles and people were getting into things for reasons that weren't strictly just trading because it was an illiquid market, then maybe it's because in the wintertime people have more free time, their machines are firing, they want the extra heat, all that kind of stuff. So maybe it makes more sense to launch your projects in the wintertime. Maybe it makes more sense to have more people, mining and blah, 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 blah in those, at that time of year. So it could, maybe that's why alt season starts then. I don't really know. It's just kind of something I've thought of because of, where there has been a lot of original Bitcoin whales in, colder climates, and a lot of them were mining. So it's very possible. And I remember from back in the day, a lot of people would be launching projects in the winter time. Not a lot of people were launching in the summertime, and they also want your free time in the summer. So it just kind of all lines up. So hopefully we have a good winter.
And adding that to the possibility of a lockdown across the northern hemisphere due to COVID.
Yeah, like I would think that lockdown would make people be like, oh, okay, well, I have no money, I'm not going to whatever. More. But it seemed like it's been the opposite. Okay, now people have all this extra time. So
yeah, exactly.
That's very possible. And plus, even with the money factor, this isn't like a balanced book revenue, everyone's screwed kind of recession. This is like there's a pandemic and the government's just printing insane amounts of money. So people are still having some money. So it's not like people are destitute, poor. So yeah, it's very, very possible that we go into these lockdowns and people want something to do.
Thinking ahead of this all season, where do you recommend people to diversify their crypto gains?
Yeah, I guess that really kind of depends on the person and where they're at in life, right? Like I think a young person that's got a lot of time on their hands, no girlfriend, no wife, no kids, is going to have definitely a different set of priorities that someone in their 30 or 40s that maybe already has a mortgage in a house, or maybe they're just looking to get going, right? So I think for everybody, probably a smart thing to do is looking at, or if you want to have any kind of settling down or roots, is real estate, whether it's, a condo in a city or farmland, because, at the end of the day, when you're renting, you're giving your money away. So if you want to live a lifestyle where, you just don't want to settle down and you just want to travel, that's fine. But that's not really a lot of people, I don't think. So I think for the average person, getting your, locking down your nest, so to speak, is probably a really good first place to start. Farmland is probably important as we move, into the future in the world that we're in, whether it's COVID screwing up supply chains and then making, food issues in places in the world, or if it's population growth and food issues that I think, real estate. And if you are buying real estate, if you can look at something with a little bit of land, is probably the first big, shot. In terms of investments, maybe not now, but in general, exposure to water is probably going to be important. Precious metals tend to be, like a typical store of value thing that people talk about. Art is something that generally seems to not depreciate. I've gotten into comic books. It was something that I was kind of into as a kid, and, my kids are into certain things, and it just,
What do you think about high-end watches? I've seen lately
a
few people talking about like Rolex, Tag Heuers, and stuff like that. Like, does that make any sense to you?
I mean, for me personally, it doesn't have any value. So when I was gonna finish this all up, I was gonna say kind of like, or hobbies or what you're into, right? So if something has collectible value, even if it's just based on scarcity, and I don't understand that that sector. So, maybe I see comic books as being something good because they've continually gone up in value. Ones get lost or wrecked along the way. No new Superman #1s are going to pop up or something like that, right? Whereas gold discoveries can happen. So if Ferraris or Rolex watches or whatever are made in limited capacity and those things have value, then if that's something you're into, then, then go for it. I mean, there's always going to be speculative bubbles even within art pricing. So, I mean, I think probably the Pokemon cards is an example of that right now, in that like something can be rare and have value and truly have increasing value because this thing is something as the, you know, the game and the just the interest, you know, like my kids like Pokemon, right? So the interest in it isn't going away. So it has value. There's scarcity. Is it actually worth $14,000 or $20,000 a card? I mean, during a mania and a speculative bubble, sure it is, but overall, probably not. So, I mean, it's like anything. If, you know, find a hobby or, you know, speculative things that you're interested in, because if you're trying to learn things that you have no interest in, you're going to make way worse decisions in your diversification. Businesses too. I mean, things that you can invest in or own yourself that are passive income so that you don't have to keep working. I don't think Bitcoin is going to forever. You know, it's not going to be a 4-year speculative, huge pump and dump bubble for the next 100 years, right? Like the party will come to an end somewhere. Even if Bitcoin is this perfect, most mainstream utopia, it's still going to find a spot where it flattens out. So business stuff and passive income things are important for looking into the future. I would definitely say be careful investing in friends. I tried to do that after 2017, and that was something that I will probably never do again, because for some reason people, I don't know, you know, like when it's a bank and you owe the bank, or I guess like a freaking loan shark, they're going to break your legs or something. But when somebody that you know, has faith in you and, you know, I don't know, it's different. The whole not giving friends and family money. I don't know if that's a saying in your country, but that was something that I grew up, right. You know, and my dad actually didn't help me with one of my school loans. And to this day, you know, like I was super mad at the time, but to this day, I actually kind of am happy for that, because, you know, I did end up missing a couple payments, and that would have been blah, blah, you know, bad. And just mixing, you know, there's the old sayings of, you know, like, don't bring up politics and religion at the dinner table or with strangers, right? Well, I don't know. Those things are maybe things that we should talk about, but you probably shouldn't mix, you know, business and pleasure with people too much. That you want to have long-term relationships with, because nothing screws that up like money.
Switching gears to the last two questions here, Thistle.
Yeah.
Do you think the probe to investigate irregularities on the U.S. elections carry any substance? Could this realistically alter elections results?
I don't know. I think that's tough, right? Because there's so many things out there on the internet claiming these huge, just bombastic irregularities that just don't seem to make sense. And then I see other little things that kind of just get swept under the rug, and it's like, wait a second, no, that right there, you know, like let's say Nevada, and there's at least a good, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly what it is now, somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 people, or votes, I should say, that came in that don't meet the residency requirements. So, and then let's say also there's a special election coming up in January for the Senate seat in Georgia. And if the Republicans win that, they will have a Senate majority and not have to worry about, you know, flipping the two independents or a Democrat for anything to, you know, to block Biden on something. So Democrats really want to win that in January. And we've heard people say, oh, if you're a Democrat, you know, move to Georgia so you can vote because it's going to be super tight. That actually is illegal. And so, you know, if people are willing to do things like that, they're probably willing to do a few other things. I mean, like, people are willing to scam and, pardon my language, you know, like, because this is the one time I will swear, fuck over their friends for altcoins. You know, you don't think that elections and massive power is it going to have people at least trying to game the system a bit? So I think that it just only makes sense that there's going to be people trying to at least game the system. And if there's people being caught with that, you know, that should be talked about. So do I think that there's necessarily like this huge grand conspiracy? I'm not seeing that. We do have the what is the FEC, Federal Election Commission chair, Trey Trainer, saying that, yeah, there's some level of election fraud happening. He's obviously not saying these big, huge things, but there's small things happening. So I think that it's disingenuous for, the one side to be saying that there's millions of votes, is just as disingenuous as all these people saying, there's nothing happening, don't worry about it, stop crying about it, cope, blah, 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 blah. No, if there's things happening, like America's, in a way, I'm not American, but in a way is kind of like a bit of a last stand, in that Europe is very divided. They're not going to be like a world leader at this point. It seems like they're just, the European Union can't even stick together. Russia is always just sort of like looking to be the sidekick to who's ever in charge. Like they have lots of resources and potential, but they're just not like the leader, right? So it seems like it's America or it's China. And that's painful growing up as a Canadian, because in my generation, we would play, video games, and you'd play like ice hockey. And you'd make it Canada versus America. You can beat the crap out of the Americans, right? Like they're 10 times as many people. They have 10 times as much money. We're really good at certain things. We've invented lots of things, but we always get kind of like looked over because of this just big behemoth beside us that is America. So yeah, it was kind of like the Americans were the bad guys. They were the bad guys with the Russians. So, but now, later in my adult life, it's like, okay, well, that from being a kid it's different now. Like we're kind of like a globalized world. Our media is from all over the place. Our media is mainly American here. And we're at this stage where the American empire is sort of slowing a bit, and it needs to pick a direction, and there's a little bit of strife happening, and the Chinese machine is pushing along, and COVID isn't hitting as hard there. There's genetic disposition to coronavirus in Asia, right? Like less people look at the curves of infection in South America, North America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. They're all different because the people that have already, have exposure to other coronaviruses that have happened, whether it be a SARS or MERS, there's been more in Asia. So like China has been able to keep their factories open. China's going to be able to keep pumping out all their crap to the rest of the world. Like we were at a point coming into this where I think, so we went from elections back to this, but I think it's important that we kind of like recognizing that what China was doing was not necessarily fair. We know what they're doing with currencies is not necessarily fair. And we know within the last 2 years that they're making freaking work camps with thousands, millions of people, making our consumer products. I think technically slave labor is not what people are using, but forced labor, and we've learned that in 2020 from documents that have come out of China, that they've started this program in Tibet. Like 500,000 Tibetans have been forced off their farms into work camps. So China, with all these other countries being on lockdown, they need consumer products. And like that was the problem with food in North America, is crops got plowed over in the spring because there was no workers to pull the stuff out of the ground. So China is going to keep their status, right? So so election, the American, if there is dirty things in the election, it should get rooted out, whether it's small things or big things, because America needs to have some level of integrity, because it's sort of like America or China at this point. And as much as people might hate American arrogance, they don't have 2 million people in work camps, making our products for us. It's just so wild that that's even happening, like if protests and equality, and whether it's women or children or Black Lives Matter or whatever it is, all these protests in the last 4 years, but there's millions of people in work camps. Like, why can't we talk about that? The NBA one guy in the NBA tried to talk about that, and he got shut down, and it
get canceled
for everything, right? So like the election stuff in the States, I think, is important for just like integrity.
And with that, we end our episode. I'm extremely happy to have hosted Thistle on Point Blank. Thanks for coming on, man. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, sure. So at DJ Thistle01 is the Twitter. I opened up a Parler. I'm not like a super right-wing guy or anything, but I just see there's a huge push of people going there. So on Parler, it's just DJ Thistle. And also check out the real altseason.com. to find more information about what alt season is, how to trade altcoins and stuff like that. And just wish everybody a good winter, and stay mentally healthy through all this. It will pass, and good luck and good fortune to everyone.
Thanks for listening. Until next time. Peace.
This episode was brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange where you can trade without KYC on legacy markets with your Bitcoin. You can trade commodities like gold, silver, oil, even indexes and forex. Join now and get a 50% bonus on top of your deposit for trading at u.primexbt.com/Panama.